this meeting. I'm chairing tonight's meeting to manage the business as efficiently as possible and invite people to speak one at a time to ensure their contributions are properly heard. Therefore, please do not speak unless invited to do so by me. This is especially important tonight as we're not using the microphones. Instead, our audio is coming through the camera speaker unit above the screen. Please ensure that all electronic devices, including mobile phones, are placed in silent and disruption is minimised as best as possible. Thank you in advance for your assistance. There's no members of the public, so I won't go through the fire evacuation procedure. I think we all know, and we'll go to agenda item 1, which is membership. There's no changes to the membership of the committee. Agenda item 2, communications and apologies. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Lambert. No substitute has been named. I'd like to welcome Matthew Bunyan and say a peaceful. Apologies.
And sure, go out the front door.
So relating to items 8 and 10, I've requested and the Chief Executive has agreed to cancel our 12th of December 2024 meeting. Democratic Service Officers have confirmed that the 2 items of business scheduled for that date can be moved to either January or March 2025 meetings. No business will be lost, nor any new business added. This change will be confirmed in your calendars after this meeting. I trust members will support this decision, which saves members and officer time and council resources. A revised programme has been drawn up and can be shared with members. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare? No? Agenda item 4, which is minutes. In accordance with the Constitution, no discussion shall take place upon the minutes except upon their accuracy. Are the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of September 2024 approved as a correct? Do any members have any interest? Thank you very much. So now we're going to move to agenda item 5, which is the quarterly procurement update for quarter 2, July to September 2024. And this is to consider the attached report and items 1, 2, 3. And this will be presented by Matthew Bunyan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So, as the Chair just said, this is the quarterly 2 update report for procurement, and the report asks that the committee note the current status of the procurement strategy action plan, the ongoing and upcoming procurements, and the progress with the new legislation, the Procurement Act 23, which now comes into effect a bit later than planned on the 24th of February 25. So in relation to the action plan, there's a table set out in paragraph 3.2, and the committee will note that the majority of the actions that were agreed for this financial year have either been embedded or are ongoing. So there's a couple of things one that's been delayed in relation to the webinar to SMEs. And the reason for that is the pending legislation changes. And it didn't seem sensible to present something to SMEs only to give them an alternative presentation in a few months' time. So that part did get delayed. And the other thing that is not already embedded or ongoing is in relation to the review of the corporate procurement strategy, which I will come to very shortly. In relation to the current procurements, paragraph 3.5, the table there sets out the current procurements and the stages that they're at. There have been 3 awards over the past quarter, which are set out in that table in relation to the food waste caddies. In relation to the current procurements for the transport chamber and for agency staff, I know members have previously asked if we could publish the values. We can only do that once the award notices have been issued, which at the time of writing we couldn't do so. But they will be on the contracts register. In relation to the Procurement Act 2023, the effective date of that has been delayed. It was due to come into effect from the 28th of October 24 originally, and we had planned to bring forward changes to our contract procedure rules and our strategy accordingly. But because of the delay, we've actually pushed that timetable back. So actually, members will know in paragraph 311, the timetable for bringing both the changes to our contract procedure rules and the procurement strategy as it is now. And you'll see that actually we started off with the contract procedure rules back in August, taking that through sort of informal cabinet meeting with the management board, and we did bring it to the policy committee. But subsequently, we've then now delayed that until January just to make sure that there was no further changes that we needed to make before we proceed with that journey. But ultimately, what we're planning to do is to bring both the contract procedure rules and the new procurement strategy through to council for approval in January, ahead of the new legislation kicking in from February next year. So, Chair, thank you very much. That is the brief overview I wanted to give, and happy to take any questions.
Members, are there any questions? Councillor George here.
Thank you, Councillor Bonder. Matthew, we have spoken at recent operations review meetings and just generally as well about the use of agency staff and whether or not we get the best value of money when we use agency staff over and above employing our own employees. I see here that we're looking, or we have awarded a new contract to additional agency staff for the street scene. Is there anything that you can tell us about, what kind of roles that they'll be doing in order to supplement our existing staff, and how using agency in this case is kind of like a good fit in this instance?
Ultimately, I mean, I'll start, but Ian might want to come in as well on this one. I mean, as you said, this is the agency staff contract for street scene. Ultimately, we're talking about the waste loaders, so the people that go out on the rounds every day collecting refuse. We absolutely have to have an agency contract there because we need to make sure that we're fully crewed up every day. And ultimately, we're bringing agency staff to come in to cover sickness, to cover planned leave, etc., to make sure that we can be fully staffed. And it's a slightly different agency contract to the other agency contracts we have. And I don't know if I'll make sure I'll hand over to Ian to add anything that he might like to.
No, that's incredibly concise summary, so thanks. Yeah, we have a framework for agencies. There's a specific lot under the frameworks for a street scene. As Matthew said, we have a slightly different need, and it is instant. We need crews, vehicles to go out fully crewed, and we need them that morning. So we have 3 companies on the framework already. What we've done with the recent tender is add a further 2. So it gives more resilience to that call out. So if one agency is unable to supply, we're able to work our way down the list, and it means that we have a greater pool of staff to draw on. All of these contracts also work on the basis of what we call temp to perm. So if we take staff on, if we have agency staff with us for 12 weeks or more, we can automatically convert them to permanent staff, and that's an absolute strategy for us. And at the moment, it's proving successful. I think there's always an issue. I'd say in terms of my services, this is one of my biggest areas of risk. Ensuring that we've got a resilient waste collection service, because boy, we feel it if it does go south. But I'm very pleased to say it has proved to be resilient over the last, I'd say, it's probably 18 months or so since we've had some pressures which actually were felt by residents in terms of that delivery. So it's working.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, please.
Just wanted to also ask if we publish the number of missed collections, so that we can kind of keep track of if the number of agency companies that we have on hand are enough, and if it's kind of, we're getting the majority of the time, we're always getting those collections on the correct date. I understand for some reasons, sometimes they may have to be a day late if there's an issue, but generally that we're making them on time.
Yep. So missed collections is one of our key performance indicators, and that will get reported up through the performance panel. We are hitting all of our targets on that. It's important to say, we might miss a collection for absolutely valid reasons, such as a vehicle breakdown, and we will get back to those if we can that day. if individual collections are missed, then that's usually down to crews who are unfamiliar with routes, which is why we want to get those temporary staff converted to permanent staff so they really know our borough well. But we're doing well against our missed collection target.
Thank you.
That's a good thing.
Thank you. I wonder if you could advise us, right? We've got on, is it 3.5, right? We've got on a splash park refurbishment. We've got multi-recycling facilities, but it doesn't say where they are. And in order to put it into some sort of scale, because I know we've got Bushy, is it King George's Park going to be renovated, the rest of it. And will that come back on this particular page in due course, because you're going to be building a new cafe there? So it's 3 questions really. It's just inquiring, whoever, sorry. Through the chair.
Through you, Chair, I'll pick them because they're all mine.
Yeah, they're all yours.
So, firstly, apologise for a spelling mistake. It should be materials recycling facility. Colloquially, well, it's worse. I normally call it a MRF. But materials recycling facility is where all the dry recycling collected across the borough from domestic collections is taken and processed. So we currently operate at Pierce's in St Albans, and that's where the facility is. But
So it's in St Albans.
That's where the current one is.
Right.
We periodically need to test the market. That's what this exercise is doing. We're doing it jointly with North and East Herts because we have very similar requirements. So it's a procurement process to go down this route. And we're currently preparing the documents for tender of that.
Can I ask, following on from that, you said North and East Herts, isn't there a nearer council we could sort of think about getting involved? And why are we going to North Herts, which is miles away?
It's not the outcome of where a disposal facility may be located will be the outcome of the tender. But proximity is going to be a very key factor in the award of that tender, because the closer they are, the more efficient they will be, and the lower the costs. So that will be significant. What we are doing by doing a joint procurement with North and East Herts is making a huge efficiency on the actual procurement process. We are procuring as separate lots. So we will be a more attractive proposition to the market because there will be a greater quantum that people can bid for, but they will be bidding in separate lots. One lot will be North and East Herts, and one lot will be Hertsmere. And we're keeping it separate because our needs are different. But if a bidder is able to pull things together and put a more attractive bid in, that's fine. But both sets of authorities have reserved the right to award individually.
I still don't understand why we don't go to councils which are nearer to us.
Well, proximity is not the issue. That will be decided by the outcome of the tender. Whoever bids. The saving is because we don't all have to write long, complicated contracts. We can have a lot of similarity between them.
Yeah, can I just add a comment on that? The reason for going to tender with those two authorities is because their contracts are expiring at the same time as ours. So whilst it might work better to have a joint procurement with one of our neighbouring authorities, if their contract is not due for renewal yet, they're not in a position to go to procurement.
Got it?
And just to give further assurance, across the county we are working so that all our contracts are beginning to align, so we can have more scope for joint procurement in that way. But it takes these are contracts which are generally over anything from a minimum 5-year to up to 15-year duration. So it takes some time to get them all to dovetail together. You also asked about Splash Park. The Splash Park reference there is the King George's Splash Park.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay, so what's happened to the cafe and all the other? We're spending £1 million plus.
So those will come forward for procurement once the designs are ready. The cafe, will require planning permission. So we'll take something through planning first. But the splash park is a refurbishment of an existing facility, and therefore we're able to go out for tender. We're also commissioning the design as part of that tender.
We're not going to have the same company. I mean this nicely, I'm saying it nicely, but the current one, which cost us an awful lot of money, we spent an awful lot, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands we spent putting the last one in. It was a lot of money, and it never really worked properly.
I'm sure you wouldn't expect me to presume the outcome of the tender, which is currently live. I'm not going to comment.
You hear where I'm coming from, as they say.
Councillor Casale, you had a...
Yes, I did. Thank you, Chair. I do have a question. Matthew, thank you for your presentation. I do have a question, but I've got a feeling that Ian's going to answer that. so apologies on that. No, I was just looking at the current procurement. Obviously, you mentioned about the recycling facility. I just wanted to double check and confirm if the one that you're mentioning here in the report is the one that we had a site visit to recently.
Yeah, so through the chair, just to explain, the procurement is for the provision of a materials recycling facility and the disposal of that dry mixed recycling, which is, so that's everything that goes in your brown bin. And it's the plant that does that, which is, it'll be taking that material, taking it to a plant, making sure it's separated in terms of plastics, aluminium, foil, etc., and then sent for forward recycling at the most economic value end destination. The plant that, for all members' benefit, the plant we visited the other week was the anaerobic digestion facility. That is where the food waste that we will be collecting from April is going to be processed. And apologies that the commissioning of disposal is a slightly complicated landscape. We procure the dry mixed recycling. The rest of the disposal is commissioned by the county council. So the plant that we visited for the food waste disposal is actually commissioned by the county council.
Right. Sorry, Chair. So what's being mentioned in the report is a different facility than what we visited, and obviously the tender is in the process and so on. So
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew, for your presentation. Cash management solution, back to item 3.5. Can you just tell us what that is?
It's our cash management software, which is due for renewal next year.
Cool.
Ultimately, everything that comes in through the bank, it filters it and posts it to the right accounts, etc. So we need to go out to procure for that.
So we're talking digital rather than physical.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you.
If there's no further questions, I'll close at the committee notes, the update and recommendations 1, 2 and 3.
Lovely.
Yes. Thank you very much.
No, good.
We're now moving on to agenda item 6, which is the quarterly financial monitoring for Q2, July to September 2024. And this is considered the attached monitoring report, which will be presented by both you. No, it's
just me. Yeah. Sarah's not here. Sarah presented, I think, the last quarter. Generally, it'd be myself or Marie, who's my deputy, that would present, but I was unavailable at the last meeting. But Sarah is very involved in actually preparing all of the data that sits behind this, and as members of the financial monitors will be aware, she attends that meeting and provides a lot of useful information to the panel. So again, this is the quarterly update report for Q2. The report covers the financial monitoring for the revenue budget, for the capital programme, for treasury management and for debt management. And each of those is detailed in appendices A to D respectively. If I may, Chair, I'll take you through sort of one appendix at a time and then pause for questions if there are any on that particular appendix. So the first one is the revenue for Q2. So that is in Appendix A. And the first couple of pages provide an overall summary, so pages 20 and 21. And you'll see from the table on page 21 that we're forecasting a year-end position of about 1.46 million in surplus. There are some deficits within some of the service lines. The most significant at the moment are in relation to asset management and legal and democratic services, as well as a pressure on general expenses. There are a few other sort of lesser significant variances forecast. All of those adverse variances are, however, offset by favourable variances across service areas, the most significant being in streeting, and the other significant one is the investment income, which is showing a year-end favourable variance of 1.26 million. And I'll touch more on that when I get to Appendix C, because that's the relevant report for that. So just to sort of really explore the sort of the most significant areas, I'm not going to go through every service page by page, but I thought I'd just talk about asset management. At the moment, asset management is showing sort of a year-end deficit, and the main reasons for that, let me just get into the right page. So it's on page 31. We've got a forecast deficit on employees. That's mostly as a result of bringing in sort of agency cover within the team. So we are looking at how we're going to recruit that team. We just recruited the new head of service, and when she comes in, I think she'll be looking at that structure going forward and what's actually required for permanent recruitment. We have had additional staff resource in there for various reasons, looking at sort of feasibility for sort of capital works, and more importantly, looking at the income generation areas, such as rent renewals and rent reviews, lease renewals, etc. And actually, whilst we are overspending on employees, you'll see that the income that's coming in is actually more than offsetting that expenditure at the moment. And that was the purpose, that whilst we were spending more, we were looking to generate that additional income going forward. So we have got some, I mean, the net difference is still a sort of an adverse variance, and you'll see that we've got some costs under third-party payments, which are sort of consultancy costs, which again are sort of feasibility works, and some of those works, as they progress, may well become part of a capital program, in which case they'll be recharged to those particular capital schemes. But at the moment, so they're being sort of funded through the general underspend across all services. But we are looking at that very closely, and we'll keep on top of that, because we would like to see the service come back in on balance by the end of the year. In terms of legal, again, there's some overspending at the moment in relation to employee costs because of agency, but that pretty much disappears by year end. But we've still got a significant overspend in relation to agency in relation to elections. So we brought in, you'll be aware that we brought in a very experienced member of staff to support in both elections during this year. That came at a significant cost. Some of that we've been able to recover, which we can recover from government in terms of the general election. Some of it, which is in relation to just the ongoing service provision, does hit the service and is an overspend. The other area that's sort of creating that net deficit at the year end is in relation to shortfalls in income. Land charges income is still behind, and I think that's as a result of sort of the property market not being so fluid at the moment. And we're also losing some of our income that we'd normally be recovering from legal fees. So that's the net position on there. In terms of general expenses, scroll down, 38. The most significant variance there is in relation to bank charges. We're seeing quite a channel shift over to card payments, and obviously card payments have a fee applied to them, whereas direct debits don't cost us anything. And I think people are wise enough to the idea that if they use their credit card to pay their council tax, they get their Tesco points back or whatever. And actually, it's an easier way of managing their finances and getting rewards at the same time. But it costs the council, but we're not allowed to recover credit card fees. There's also some additional spend within there in relation to some new software that we've invested in and some subscriptions that we've joined, such as the East of England, Eastern Powerhouse. I mentioned street scene was showing a favourable variance. That's mainly within parking services, due to the fact we've got some ongoing vacancies there with our CEOs, our civil enforcement officers. But actually, on the flip side of that, we are actually seeing income on that side improving. So whilst we've got a reduced number of CEOs out on the streets, our income is actually doing very well. So that's a good favourable variance. And the investment income, again, I'll come to shortly, which is showing a very significant variance. So that's my sort of brief overview of Appendix A. Happy to pause there and take any questions if there are any. Anyone have any questions?
Yeah. I was going to add on, I'm not 100% sure whether I'm doing this at the right time, whether you should tell me to wait another quarter. I'm just interested to know how much is the effect of the budget and national insurance contributions going up, how much that's going to actually affect our budgets. Because it is going to be quite a considerable amount of money. So I'm wondering, how much is it and how are you going to actually cover that in here?
Right. In relation to this year, it's not going to affect this year.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so it will affect the budget from next year. Ultimately, in the Chancellor's autumn statement, she did say that the increase in employers' NI for public services would be covered in terms of funding. We're not sure how that mechanism will work, but we will be reflecting that in the budget, which we'll be bringing forward for next year. So next year. So when it comes to January, we'll give you our draft budget, and you'll be able to look at it then.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm coming through, Chair, but I'm guessing that it's going to be you that's going to answer this. You mentioned, Matthew, that in street scene, because we had some vacancies still in the community enforcement officers. Are those vacancies because they're posts that haven't yet been filled, or have people left? We haven't had any resignations.
Yeah. So through you, Chair. So this is just to be clear. This is civil enforcement officers.
Okay.
So this is in old money parking orders.
Right. Yeah.
We've been carrying some vacancies for a little while. Actually, we've recruited successfully, so we're up to strength. The increased income that we've seen is predominantly from increased parking use. So the volume of parking in our surface car parks and on-street car parks has gone up. That's where it's come from. So it's less about penalty charge notice.
Okay.
Georgia?
Thank you, Councillor Fonda. When under the housing services area, there's an overspend in regards to homelessness. Do we foresee that this increase will continue and that we'll need to allocate more money towards homelessness services, as it's also one of the key risks for our borough? Or was there anything that was kind of like temporary that has caused it for this this reporting period?
So I think I can start that response, but I happen to have Hilary in my right hand side as well, who is the head of service. But yes, this is a pressure for all authorities really at the moment. We are seeing increase in demand for housing, and we are seeing more families presenting as homeless, and I think this is an impact of the sort of current economic conditions. We've been through quite a turbulent time in terms of high interest rates, and obviously rents, etc., going up as a result of that, and the impact that is having. But we are flagging this as a risk. It is certainly one of our highest risks in the budget going forward. So it's a pressure that is there at the moment, and we're closely monitoring it. Hilary, did you want to read?
There's just a couple of things probably to add. One is that obviously, while we have our own TA, we also use private sector provided temporary accommodation, and those costs are going up quite significantly. But what we're doing is we're working really hard to focus upstream on prevention. So if you at council last week, we took the homelessness strategy, and the review there shows the increase of approaches of homelessness. But our temporary accommodation, we've managed to keep it because we're doing more intensive prevention work. One of the big issues is that if people are on housing benefit, the local housing allowance rates still remain at the 2011 rates. So they haven't gone up, so that you can imagine the gap between rents and what we can recover is reduced. But yeah, our focus, that's what we're very focused on, the prevention side, and looking also to see how we can discharge approaches into the private renter sector rather than having to accommodate them in temporary accommodation. But yeah, it's a high risk across the whole country, really, isn't it?
Thank you.
That's nice. Thank you. Just picking up something that Ian was saying regarding parking income increasing, are you able to quantify how much of the increase is as a result of charging for car parking that was previously not charged, or is this just a general improvement in income?
So again, through you, Chair, I can't give you exact figures of
I wanted it exact.
but
That's fine.
Whenever we make any changes to any of our parking regimes, we always monitor it very carefully. Since new charges were introduced from June, we have seen increased parking. So that has led to increased income. So the number of actual customers using the car parks on street and off street has been increasing.
I think in terms of this year's budget, the budget incorporated the additional charges for introducing new charges for car parking. So actually this positive variance at the moment is, as Ian says, due to additional demand as opposed to new charging, which we had factored into the budget.
Thank you.
Then we should move on to second.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the capital programme update. Currently, we have a revised capital programme of just over 14.3 million, and we're forecasting spend by the end of the year of 13.4 million. So there is a significant variance of 26.9 million. But if we take that into context, 15.5 million of that variance relates to Elstree Film Studios, and the project to demolish and rebuild was suspended by council on the 1st of October, and we will be removing that project from the capital programme when we come to the capital budget. So that's a significant part of that variance. Other variances in relation to slippage into next year, there's actually 3 housing development projects which are sort of underway, but the main spend is not going to be until next year now. So we will be slipping sort of 11.8 million in relation to the 3 housing development schemes, Darks Lane, Catterick and Cannon, in addition to Meadow Park, which we've heard about already, and also there's the Allen Lane Cemetery, where we were looking to acquire some land, and we've not been able to properly engage with the landowner, and it could, I think as members have been advised before, we might need to go down the CPO route in that, and that's taken some time. So that's the slippage. There is a project or projected overspend on the St John's Church project, which I'm glad to sort of say that project is now complete, and we're looking to hand over those 6 properties, or one we're retaining actually now for ourselves, and the other 5 are being handed over to HLL, our joint venture company, and we have families lined up to go into those properties. But the overspend, which is being negotiated with the developer at the moment, is basically due to the cost of development having gone up since the tender process, and we are negotiating that, but there may be a requirement to come and seek additional funding for that. The good news was, though, that as part of that development, we were able to get additional grant funding through the Local Authority Housing Fund, which we've been able to put towards the costs of those, reducing the amount of Section 106 monies that we needed to use. And those properties are being sold to HLL, so we will then get a capital receipt, and that capital receipt will be recycled back into more housing development, and actually will go to fund some of those schemes that have been delayed into next year. So, I think that's probably all I really wanted to say on capital. I mean, we're talking big numbers, and I appreciate that there's always concerns when you're slipping large numbers into the following year, but it's not an unusual thing for a capital programme to see slippage of sort of quite a significant amount. That's all I wanted to say on that. Do you guys have any questions on that? So we'll move on to Appendix C then, which is Treasury Management. As I said, we're doing relatively well at the moment. Interest rates have remained high during this financial year, and so they were at 5% until just the other week on the 12th of November, when they were reduced to 4.75. So what was forecast in terms of a reduction in interest rates has been a lot slower than we ever anticipated. When we set the budget, economists were expecting interest rates to be dropping down to about 3% by the end of this year. Now that's not going to be the case now, and that forecast has been pushed back. And the appendix sort of sets out the forecasts as at the time of this report, but even those have changed recently, and actually that drop off in interest rates is being pushed further back at the moment. So as a result of that, we've been earning much higher returns on our investments. And as you've just heard, there's been some significant slippage on the capital programme and underspend in relation to projects that we've now suspended. As a result of that, we've had a lot more money in the bank to invest and getting those higher returns on those. So pretty much all of the additional funding has really come through having that additional money in the bank and those higher interest rates. We have obviously spent quite a bit of money on the studios this year, and we've agreed loan funding to the studios for their share of those costs, and we will be seeing a return on that money in terms of an interest rate, but we're just finalising the loan agreement with the studios. And once that is in place, we'll be able to actually start reflecting that interest in our returns as well. I think it's worth noting that we have got a number of loans to our subsidiary companies, working capital loans, development loans, as well as to our partner organisations like Inspirewall, Building Control, and we're generating currently in this exclusive studio at the moment around £400,000 a year in interest from those loans. And say in terms of HDL, they have a working capital loan, which is sort of a variable facility, and the development loans, as soon as the developments are being completed and sold off, they're being repaid in full. We expect Eldon Avenue to be completed within the next couple of weeks, really, and that development loan will be repaid at that point. That's probably it on Treasury. That's all I wanted to say. But we can take any questions from them.
Yeah, Councillor Quilty. Could be completely me, and maybe my brain isn't working tonight.
Matthew, you tell me if it is or it isn't.
Just tonight, Chair.
Yeah, in terms of you mean. Table 2, I'm looking at the increase and decrease on the right-hand side. Yeah?
Yes.
Does that add up?
That's showing. I'll have to get my calculator out and work
There's something a bit odd about it. I don't understand it. Or maybe it's the way it's written. Or
Yeah, I think the minus signs probably don't clear up. So in terms of local authorities, for example, when we reported at last quarter, we had 35 million invested with local authorities. That's now reduced to 30.
yeah, but when I look at all this, that local authorities is 5 million. Money marks has
gone up. Has gone up by 7.7. So local authorities has gone down. Money market's gone up.
Okay.
So it's the minus signs. Yeah, I think I will see if we can get brackets.
Yeah, I think
brackets in there next time. Ultimately, the total investments has moved from 60.487 last quarter up to 63.
Yeah, it's just brackets presently.
Thank you, Sharon. I mean, just taking with that same table, could you just explain how it relates to, how the money market funds relates to the council and in terms of the intricacies of what we invest, what we get back, and is it kind of normal for councils to do that? No, I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing money market funds. I was just curious, that's it.
Ultimately, money market funds, they're very secure deposits. They're huge funds and very, very diverse. So ultimately, loads of authorities, loads of businesses, etc., invest in these money market funds. We use 3 particular funds. They're all in sterling, so we don't invest in any foreign funds. They're all UK sterling. And ultimately, they will take all of that money, they will invest it in the markets across an incredibly diverse range of investments that are open to them. Most money market funds return are generally aligned to UK base rate, so we're normally earning around base rate, maybe just a little bit above. And what we do is we track the funds that are performing the best, and we will switch our money between those funds. So we're trying to track the best performing funds. Essentially, they are completely liquid funds. We can invest money today and we can draw it out tomorrow. We earn interest on the daily balances, which are constantly changing. So we've got potentially up to 30 million you can invest in our money market funds. We also have a call account with our bank for up to 10 million as well. So we've got potentially 40 million we can hold in liquid funds as we need to.
And how much say do you get on a kind of day-to-day basis? So, well, on a day-to-day basis, how much say do we have in terms of should we invest here, should we not invest there?
We don't have any say. They're AAA rated funds, so they're incredibly diverse. We put our money into that fund. We get the return that the fund are making less their commission, essentially. So if the fund's returning 5.1%, we get 5.1% less. And that rate of return changes day by day by day. Okay, so we don't have any say in what they're investing in. Now, some authorities have taken decisions to invest in only completely ethical funds, but what is a completely ethical fund? And I think once you start doing that, your opportunities for investment are becoming fewer and fewer. But there are some pension funds, etc., will choose their investments differently. What we're looking for is someone to hold our money in a liquid fund that we can get back tomorrow if we need it. But we're making our money work for us.
Thank you.
Georgie.
Thank you. Just on here, the Inspiral loan, it seems that it's decreased by 185,000 in this quarter or this period. So just looking at, if we continued at that kind of rate, I think it would take around 4.5 years for us for Inspiral to finish paying the loan. Is that around what we expect? Are they kind of on track to pay the loan in that time? Is that the kind of time frame that we want them to?
Yeah. It's an annuity loan, so they pay the same amount on a monthly basis. but as the loan progresses, a bit like a mortgage, the amount of principal repayment and the amount of interest changes. So at the moment, the amount of interest they're paying is higher than the amount of principal they're paying. Whilst they continue to pay the same amount, that will eventually flip around and the amount of interest will reduce as the amount of principal repayment comes back. But they are repaying their loan regularly, and the loan is due to expire 6 months before their contract renewal, which I think is 2032.
Yeah, too far, but yeah, well, they've got plenty of time to plan. You'll be pleased to hear as well, they seem very busy, so hopefully they're doing well and will be able to repay that loan. So
Yeah, no, they've been paying it regularly. So.
No further questions. Should we move to Appendix D?
Okay, Appendix B, Appendix D, which is the debt management. Okay, there are a number of things I'd just like to sort of cover in here. I think we've seen the sort of upturn in debt overall in terms of this quarter, which actually is quite usual for quarter two. That's when we raise all of our summonses for council tax and for business rates. So generally during the first quarter, we hope to see debt still on a slight decline. And then for in-year debt, if people haven't paid their council tax on time, they would have had their first reminder, their second reminder, and then a final demand. If they don't pay their debt at that point, we then raise a summons and we will take that account to court for a liability order. It's only at the point of liability order it then becomes a debt. Otherwise, it's an account that is due to be paid, but we don't consider it as a debt until it's not been paid for those 90 days. So it's quite normal to see an uplift in quarter two. What is good and what hasn't happened for many years is actually at the end of quarter two, the debt for the current year is slightly below the debt at the same time last year. And bearing in mind the amount of money we raise in debt year after year after year, I think it's the first time in quite a number of years that we've actually seen the debt at quarter two being below the previous years. And I think that shows how effective actually our debt recovery has been in terms of prior year debt. And we've really been putting a lot of effort into that over the course of this year. So I think more significantly on that as well, whilst the debt, the total debt we're talking about at the moment is only around about 90k below where it was at this point last year, the element of that debt that relates to Hertsmere has actually gone down by 680,000. So not all of the debt. I'll just find which table that is so we can do it on the same page. So if we look at table 2, that shows that the current debt is 15.6 million. At this stage in September 23, it's 15.69 million. But actually, that's where it's not on that table, but it is in one of the other tables. See it now. But the share of Hertsmere's debt is considerably less than it was a year ago. So good news for us, and good that the overall level of debt is coming down. Just to sort of go through the individual areas of debt, sundry debt. Unfortunately, sundry debt is showing an increase quarter on quarter, so it's gone up. So we're looking at table 3 on page 66. So the current sundry debt is 765k compared to 617 last quarter. However, within that, included within that, is about 257k's worth of debt, which is either grant funding, which council haven't passed over to us yet, or it's actually money that's due from our subsidiaries, which again, we don't have any issues with being able to recover that. So if you were to take that 257k off, actually the remainder of the debt has gone down. So it's quite a good news story. Housing benefit, we're actually seeing housing benefit going up at the moment. whereas for the past few years we've seen housing benefit going down. The reason it's going up at the moment is because we're coming close to the end of the migration from housing benefit to universal credit. As people have moved over to universal credit and come off of housing benefit, if they had an overpayment previously but were still receiving benefit, that overpayment reduces their weekly benefit that they receive. So it's not classed as a debt. It can only be classed as a debt when they either move out of the borough, at which point we will close their account and raise a debtor, or if they move to universal credit. And that's what's happening. More households are moving over to universal credit, and as that's happening, if they've got an overpayment sitting on their account, then we have to raise a debt for that. So unfortunately, we are seeing more overpayments, historical overpayments being raised with debt. So at the moment, that debt is going up. But the good thing is we are still collecting on older debt, and you'll see from the tables within that sort of housing benefit section, I mean, we received over the last quarter about 84k in prior year debt, but unfortunately it's about 170. So looking at table 9, about 170k that we raised in terms of new debt. That trend is unfortunately going to carry on for a little while. But the good news is that over the past few years, we've seen a massive reduction in the amount of housing benefit debt that we've had and the amount of new debt that's been raised. And that's because we've put a lot of effort into prevention of new housing benefit as well as recovery of existing. Council tax debt has risen significantly, as I mentioned. It's gone up by about 1.5 million over this quarter, and that's because we have raised all of those summonses for people that have not paid their council tax this year. All of those debts are now sitting with our enforcement agents, and we've currently got about 5.4 million of debt with 3 different enforcement agents, and they are managing to recover those debts and taking appropriate action when necessary. Business rates, there has actually been a slight reduction over the past quarter despite having raised summonses for this year. And year on year, we've seen quite a good reduction, about 1.1 million from this time last year in terms of our business rates there. The in-year collection rate is unfortunately very disappointing. It's way behind where we want it to be this year, but that is due to a couple of, I think there's 3 high value accounts that are listed in paragraph 5.4. 2 of those, literally the payments came in shortly after the quarter. Elstree Tower is it's an unusual one in that the debt actually arose following the VOA changing their valuation of the property. But unfortunately, by the time they changed it, the company that were in that property had gone into administration. So we're unlikely to recover that debt, and we're probably going to have to write it off. But ultimately, VOA had said the property was empty, but because they still had a security guard in there, they then deemed it wasn't empty, and they brought it back into occupied, which meant we then had to raise a debt of 660,000 after they got into administration. So we had no control over that. So that was disappointing. I think they were the main things I wanted to say. SIL debt is also improving. That is going down. Most of the SIL debt is historical. In-year collection is generally pretty good. We get the odd case where SIL is not recovered immediately, but we've got processes in place to make sure that developers do pay up. And parking is a managed service, so there's a legal regime for collecting PCNs. If they're not recovered immediately, they go to a company called Tech, and they have to follow the legislative process to recover those debts. That's all I wanted to say, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Varley, you had your hand up.
Yeah, the final year collection rate is 97.75% for council tax. So what are we doing to make sure we hit the target of 98%?
What I would say is that the figures in the report are an in-year collection rate. So we continue collecting beyond the year, and actually we've seen quite a significant amount of debt recovered from prior years this year. So I do expect us to hit the 98%. I'm not sure we'll hit 98% in-year collection this year. I think we will be closer this year than we were last year. But the fact is we are collecting a lot of older year debt, which is actually impacting on in-year collection. So if people are paying older debt first, we always apply it to the older debt first, which does have an impact on in-year. But the team are putting all of the efforts in to try and recover. We've got a significant amount out with enforcement agents currently. We're looking at new initiatives. We're looking at a texting initiative now to send reminders to people to say you haven't paid your council tax this month. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people, you get a text message, you think, oh, that's a fraudulent one. But it does at least prompt people to think, oh, have I paid my council tax? And initiatives like that are helping. We're looking to be sending sort of nice letters out rather than our formal reminders, but nice sort of prompt letters just to sort of say, just to remind, just to let you know your council tax was due last week, and that sort of thing. So we're looking at new initiatives to try and prompt people into paying. The other thing we're doing is promoting our direct debits, and actually we've seen quite an uptake in the level of accounts that are now on direct debit for council tax.
Another thing like I was just about to ask, see what you just explained. Can we do more to stop council tax debts from getting worse, like offering more payments plans before we sending cases to enforcement?
Yes, we've already done that. So one of the things we implemented last year was something called an auto spar. So it's a special payment arrangement. So if someone hasn't paid, we'll send them a reminder. Before it gets to summons stage, we will send them a new payment plan within the letter that goes out. If they accept their payment plan, all they need to do is go to the link and agree, and that payment plan will be put into place. And then that also encourages them to set up a direct debit. So actually, they don't need to contact us, they don't need to speak to us, they can actually set up a new payment arrangement themselves based on what their outstanding debt is.
Thank you.
Georgia.
At the November full cabinet meeting, I think the cabinet discussed some of the bad debt write-off that had taken place. I think they're relatively small amounts of money. But can you tell us a bit more about at what point do you consider a bad debt that's unrecoverable and then write it off, and what can we do to try and prevent that happening, but also potentially sometimes bring that forward so that people aren't carrying debts that they could never afford to pay? Thank you.
Yeah, we have. I mean, council tax, business rates, parking. There's a legal regime you have to follow. Once you get a liability order, you can then instruct enforcement. Ultimately, we don't want to go to enforcement agents. So with council tax debt, with business rate debt, we are trying to engage with customers earlier to try and get them to enter into an arrangement to pay. And we warn them that there will be additional charges if they don't engage with us. Once it gets to that stage of enforcement, we will put it out to the enforcement agents. They will contact customers as well. If they're unable to contact them, then they are able to do searches. They look like financial searches. They'll use the electoral register, things like that, to try and identify where a debtor is currently, and then they will start serving notices if they've moved address or whatever. Some people we just cannot trace. Where that happens, then we'll bring those debts. Those debts will be returned to us, and we'll bring them forward for write-off. We're trying to catch up with write-offs, and we're sort of pretty much there. So any of those older debts that we can't recover because we can't locate the debtor, or they just don't have the means to pay, we will bring those debts forward for write-off at the earliest opportunity, really. but the level of debt, and Councillor Georgia, you'll be aware from what the Cabinet agreed, the level of debt that we wrote off last month was less than 0.05% in terms of our overall debt base. So we do write off quite small levels of debt, but you're absolutely right. We need to write off anything that is unrecoverable, because if we don't, then our accounts are not presenting the proper, true and fair value.
Thank you.
There's no further questions. I propose that the committee notes the update. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now move on to agenda item 7, which is that partnerships mapping update. This is consider the attached monitoring report, which will be presented by Hilary.
Thank you, Chair. So back in 2020, the Operations Review Committee had a task and finish group that drew up the original register. So they members mapped all the different partnerships across all the different departments. And what was agreed then was that we would bring this annual update to this meeting. So this is the fourth annual update of the register. And basically I've set out in the report where the changes are. There are some additional changes. Matthew, I missed the deadline for the papers had already gone for publishing, so but Matthew has provided some more updates, primarily the updating of the actual values of the partnerships, and then there were 2 or 3 other very specific items. One update from your report is we added under financial services section I think you've included local government futures, which is provides government funding and collection fund advice to finance, and so that has been added as a new item. And then under section M, under information services, the further changes that we no longer provide IT support to Elstree Studios, so that ended in March. So I've also updated that. And then for the building control company, previously we'd noted that there was a potential share of profits via dividend, but the way that has come about is then through providing a direct remuneration back to the council, £21,000. So that has been added as well. And then business pool, rates pool is also going to extend into 25-26. So that amendment has been I've made as well on top of the report that you've got in front of you. So basically the mapping it sets out is under all the different sections of the different departments in the council, and I've just noted in the report where the changes are. Most of it is no change, all the values have been updated, there's nothing really significant. And then the purpose of really bringing it to this committee is so you can see all the different partnerships across the council, but also if you decide that there was a particular area or particular partnership that you were interested in having a deeper dive into, we could invite the appropriate departments or whatever to come forward and give you a more detailed update if there was any particular area that the committee felt that they wanted to look into it in a little bit more detail. And then at the back of the report is also a mapping of all the different networking arrangements that officers are involved with across the county. There's lots of partnerships that are kind of more like networking groups for the respective service areas that we're engaged with. So they're included as part 2 of the agenda of the appendix. So I'm happy to take any questions. I might be more likely to defer to other heads of service because I don't know their partnerships inside out.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Hilary, for your updating presentation. Just a quick one on the section D of community safety. It says the Hertfordshire CCTV partnership, and it explains the cost that's given there. I just want to understand if the total cost that's mentioned, is that the total cost for all the 4 council partners, or what was the contribution of Hertsmere to that pot?
So that's the cost for Hertsmere for running all of our CCTV. So the cost of the monitoring, the cost of the transmitting the data, running the control room. So that's all the costs for Hertsmere CCTV service.
And then it would be fair to assume that the other three councils are also paying roughly the same amount.
No, because, for example, Stevenage have a lot more cameras than we do. East Herts have relatively few cameras, so it's based on the number of cameras that we have within the partnership. That's how it's split.
Do you by any chance know the number of cameras we have?
Yes, we've got 23
CCTV cameras.
CCTV cameras. Yeah.
Of course, Hertsmere.
Yeah.
And cost as much. Okay.
Well, thank you. First of all, just wanted to say it's very disappointing that Pub Watch isn't a statutory one on here, but that's just an aside. Hertfordshire Growth Board is on here, and I'm pleased to see that. The national government's key priority is getting us back on track with growth. What more can we be doing to support Hertfordshire Growth Board and also growth across Hertsmere?
Answer that because that's a planning and economic development kind of area, so I'd have to defer that to.
Okay, just the board itself. Yeah, is there anything about the board that you think we should be doing more or less to try to support them with?
My understanding is that Councillor Newmark chairs that board now, so he's the chair. I don't know any more details. Sorry, I don't know any more details about it.
Thank you.
Any other further questions?
Yes, please, if I may. I've got to scroll back madly now to find where I saw it. Ian, this is one for you. Just in light of we're meeting again tomorrow evening, the task and finish on the lighting and rubbish behind shops and what have you. And I just noticed on here under environmental health, section H, there's the Hertfordshire Fly Tipping Working Group, which is a subgroup of the Hertfordshire Waste Partnership. Is there any value that you think might be added to what we're doing through them?
Yes, so across the county, so the 10 districts and boroughs and the county council, we all come together under the umbrella of the Herts Waste Partnership. That's attended at a member level. So Councillor Richards is our representative on that body. And then beneath that, we have a number of umbrella groups. And one of it, which is a fly tipping group. It's a really practical group. Looking at sharing experience, learning, etc., and also helps us liaise with partners such as police, National Farmers Union, other bodies across the county. So we get some good value out of it from that way. I think it's enabled us to persuade the Police and Crime Commissioner to set aside some funding for tackling fly tips on private land. So frequently we're not able to help private landowners, but we can access and help them access that fund, typically for what are called target hardening. So yeah, it's a very valuable group. It tends to be attended quite an operational level. It's really a practical one. So I imagine a number of members, if you're interested in fly tipping, you will have come across Chris King, who works in Paul Sawyer's team. He's our Enviro Crime lead. Chris goes to that meeting, and I think it's just a really good one to share experience learning, and also sometimes cross-border cooperation, because fly tippers aren't particularly interested in borough boundaries.
Thank you.
Further questions? No? In that case, propose that the committee notes the update.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, agenda item 8, which is the forward planning programme and committee work programme. 9 members of the update given earlier, democratic service officers can give further details of the new effect that this has on the committee's work programme if necessary, by moving items on the next month's meeting. We're looking to note the attached committee work programme and council forward plan and identify possible issues for scrutiny consider requirements. Do you have any questions regarding the current work programme?
Sorry, Chair, I just wonder, rather than delay the committee, if I could catch Councillor Nicholas and Councillor Carser afterwards about tomorrow night's meeting.
Okay. But no questions. In that case, suppose that the committee notes the update. We'll move on to item 9, which any other business that the chair considers urgent. Just to confirm there's no urgent business. Item 10, which is dates of the future meeting. Future meeting is scheduled to take place here at 7 o'clock at the civic offices in Bournemouth on the 14th of January 2025, which is the next meeting, followed by the 1st of January, which is a joint budget scrutiny meeting, which will be held with the Policy Review Committee, and then again on the 18th of March 2025. And confirm the meeting is closed at 8:10.
Well done.
Thank you.